All right, let's get straight into it. We're gonna talk about how much it costs to become a helicopter pilot. To answer this question, we have to talk about the different type of ratings you can get. So the first rating you can get is your private, and your private pilot's license just allows you to fly with yourself or your friends and family, but it does not allow you to earn money. So you can just get your private and buy a helicopter and fly around. The next rating you could get is your commercial. And what your commercial allows you to do is get paid to fly. So any job when someone is giving you a return for the services you provide, basically if someone is paying you, you have to have a commercial pilot's license. Now, if you want to work in the commercial world, if you want to be a commercial pilot, you probably need your instrument rating. And what your instrument rating is going to allow you to do is fly in the clouds. Typically we fly in visual conditions when we can see the world outside, but sometimes the weather falls apart and the clouds drop, and that instrument rating allows us to fly through the clouds. And then two additional ratings that you may or may not want is your CFI, which is your Certified Flight Instructor rating, so you can teach people to fly, and your CFII or CFII, Certified Flight Instructor Instrument rating, so you can teach people how to fly. Now, I'll link to a video up here that I did explaining all of the different ratings and why you may or may not want those ratings. But with that out of the way, we have talked about the ratings that you can get. So I'll start this video by saying these numbers can vary drastically across the country or across the world, and your personal experience may differ from this massively due to a variety of reasons that are maybe out of your control. But this is gonna set a good baseline on what to expect, at least in the States, in America, on how much your licenses are gonna cost. Okay, so I'm gonna be working on my phone. I will throw the math I'm doing up here, but we're just gonna do some basic back of the napkin math to get some approximate numbers. So for your private pilot's license, which is the first license that you get that just allows you to fly, how much does that cost? Well, the FAA states that you need 40 hours of flight time. And on average, from the school I went to where I work now, for an R22, it's about $400 per hour, and for a 44, it's about $600 per hour. So if we take just the minimum number of hours required, if you were to do your training in the minimum number of hours in the R22, it would be about $16,000. And all I did for that math was I took 40 hours of flight time times $400 an hour, and that's $16,000. And if you were to get your private pilot in the minimum number of hours and do it in the R44, which is $600 an hour, if you do 40 hours times $600 an hour, that's $24,000. Now, we are not including taxes on this, which is gonna increase that cost even more. And the numbers I just quoted you were with the instructor included. Some schools may charge you that price just for the aircraft without the instructor, who's gonna be an additional charge. But most schools I've seen include the instructor with whatever they charge you per hour. So the caveat with those numbers are, I literally have never seen anyone complete their private pilot's license in the minimum number of hours. Now with commercial, instrument, CFI, and CFII, I have seen a lot, if not most people, complete those hours in the minimum number of hours. But for private, I've never seen anyone do it in 40 hours. So how many hours did it take me? It took me about 80 hours of flight time to get my private. Now that number is really high. I think some of the factors there were out of my control, but it took me about 80 hours. Now it may take you 80, it may take you 120. I've seen that relatively regularly, but let's call it about 70 hours. If you come underneath that number, that's great, you save money. If it's more, then you can expect that, but let's call it 70 hours as the average. So if we take 70 flight hours times $400 per hour, in the R22, that's $28,000. Now, if you take 70 hours times $600 an hour for the R44, that's $42,000. So I would say on average, you should plan for about $30,000 to about $50,000 for your private. And also we haven't included the cost of the check ride, the FAA knowledge test, all of the ground instruction, all of the equipment and charts and supplements and headsets. So depending on your situation, how your school calculates ground hours, what the check ride fee is, all of those different variables, it can go way higher and way lower. Now, what I recommend is you go sit down with your flight instructor or the school you're thinking about going and try to get a written estimate of how much it's gonna cost. Now, the thing is, what I would not recommend is that you buy your private pilot's license up front. Some schools would be like, okay, hey, if you give us $40,000, we will give you your private pilot's license, or you'll have your private pilot's license at the end of it. However, that's BS, because no one can guarantee how many hours it's gonna take you. If they say on average it takes us 60 hours, but you just are struggling to get a concept and it takes you 100 hours, well then your budget is completely out the wall. You already gave them money and they weren't able to give you a private pilot's license. So you can try to get an estimate beforehand, but it may not totally hold true. Okay, so after that, you decide you wanna go on and get your commercial pilot's license. How much is that gonna cost? Well, after you get your private, your commercial, you can probably get pretty close to the minimum. You're gonna need an additional 100 hours of flight time. So in the R22 at $400 an hour, if you take $400 an hour times 100 additional flight hours, that's $40,000. And in the R44 at $600 an hour, times an additional 100 hours, it's gonna be $60,000. And I would say you can be pretty confident in that number. Like I said, most people are able to get the commercial in the minimums. However, potentially in your circumstance, you may have to factor in more instructor costs. You're also gonna have to pay for your written test. You're gonna have to pay for your check ride, all the additional charts and books you're gonna need. So it's gonna be a little bit more than that. So right now we're sitting at maybe 80,000-ish, 90,000 to get your commercial. And I'm gonna conclude that video there. Those are just like some really basic numbers. But if you were to go get your CFI, your instrument, or your CFII, I'll make a video on that if you guys want that. If you're curious about it, let me know down in the comments below if that's something you'd want to see. But those private and commercial numbers are pretty industry standard across America. If you have any questions about that, let me know down in the comments below. I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.